Hey guys, it's Elle. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here with my February wrap up. February was just kind of a slower month, but also I read a lot of great books, and I ended up reading 12 books. And I read a lot longer books as well, so I feel like that's why I had less books than last month, where last month I think I read 16. So, and also February is a shorter month, but I don't know. It just felt like February just felt long. Like the days felt long, but then the weeks went by really quickly. But anyways, the first book I want to talk about is Killer of Mine by Alexis Grace. I listened to this one on audio. It is a FBI White Shoes romance, and I really enjoyed it. So our heroine, she I think is in the police academy, and she is trying to find intel on her father, who is actually a serial killer. And she is kind of buddying up with the FBI agents that are on her father's case, trying to figure out information, and she ends up, they find out why she was around them all the time, and so she ends up being put under witness protection, and she has to stay with the 5 guys who are all FBI agents. And this one is so much fun. I really loved how fast-paced it was, and the storyline of trying to figure out where her dad was, and them also finding out about her dad and how he is a serial killer. And I really enjoyed this one, and I am super excited for the sequel. These are pretty short and easy to get through, and just really fun, enjoyable romances. And I really loved her relationship with all of the different guys. That was really interesting. And they kind of use sex as a healing process kind of for the characters, and it was really interesting, and I'm excited to continue on with this series. And I ended up giving this one 5 stars. Really enjoyed it, solid read, and I'm excited for the next book. Then after I finished Killer of Mine, I decided to pick up Quicksilver. I've been reading this on my Kindle or physically. I think I was reading it on my Kindle first, and then I decided to switch over to the audiobook. And this one is super long. It is a fantasy romance. It's actually a really unique world, which I really enjoyed. So the heroine, she ends up kind of in this world where there's these different kingdoms, and she's a part of this one kingdom, this one sector of the kingdom where it's just living very poorly, just a decline in the city that she's in. Just they kind of call it the slums. And she ends up stealing this piece of metal from an officer, and she's kind of a little con woman. She does these little things, trying to support her and her brother. And she ends up being caught and taken to the queen's palace or whatever, and something happens, and that's all I'm gonna say because I don't want to spoil anything. But I really loved how this one dealt with alchemy and different materials meaning different things, and it was really interesting, and I really enjoyed the hate to love aspect of the hero and heroine's relationship. And that's where she kind of meets King Fisher, and he is a fae king, and it's just so interesting, this world, and I'm really excited for the sequel. It was just, I feel towards the end it dragged a little bit, the middle portion, just nothing was happening, and then the end really picked up. So I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and it was a really good solid start to the series, and I'm really intrigued by this world. It's just so interesting, and I loved the uniqueness of it being a lot of stuff dealing with alchemy and different materials. I just thought that was so cool. So I really enjoyed this one, and I'm excited to continue on with this series. Then I decided to go kind of down a deep spiral of emotional, darker romances. Not darker in the sense it's a dark romance, but darker emotionality wise. So I decided to continue on with the Boys of Tommen series by Chloe Walsh. I had read Binding and Keeping 13 last year or 2 years ago, I can't remember, and I saw that Jess from Peace Love Books was picking up the rest of the series, and she was loving it, especially Joey and Aoife's story, and I was I am such in the mood for an emotional romance. So I decided to pick it back up, and I just flew through this book. Joey and Aoife are just top tier romance for me. Like, I just love them so, so much. It was just, their story is so good. And so we kind of flash forward to when they meet. So this whole book is kind of the prequel to the romance that we see that they have during like Binding and Keeping 13. So we get to see them meeting, and Joey's actually working for Aoife's dad as a mechanic. And they kind of meet, and they both realize they have this like instant chemistry, instant connection, but she is dating someone else, and he also doesn't want to get involved with her because of his home life, and he just feels very damaged. And it's just like, I don't want to be in a relationship with you just because I don't want to let you down. Like, I feel like I let down my family all the time. And this deals heavily with child abuse, child neglect, domestic abuse, and at his home right now, like, his dad is very abusive to his siblings, him and his mom, and that is a very heavy thing throughout this whole book and this series. And he has kind of taken on the father and mother role and is kind of the sole provider most of the time for his younger siblings. And it is just so hard to read. And at first, Aoife has no idea about any of this because he doesn't want anyone to know. And so they kind of start forming a friendship, and we see them over the years in their relationship of their friendship until they finally decide to go for it in a relationship together. And it is just so good. But this one also does deal heavily with drug and substance abuse. So just know that going in, if that is a trigger for you, I would not pick this series up. But Joey uses substance abuse to kind of cope with the feelings that he's feeling. His parents are just absolutely horrible. His mom just will not leave his dad, and it is just heartbreaking. And they've kind of painted Joey as this, like, what's the word? Like, he is exactly like his father. Like, he is a mini-me of his father, which is just completely untrue. But the series is just so heartbreaking. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. It was amazing. I love Joey and Aoife so much. So good. The next book I read in February was Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I ended up picking this up on audio, and I really enjoyed it, but I also have some strong feelings about it. So this one, our heroine, she is a diver, and she's on her like college dive team, and she kind of overhears a conversation with one of her friends on the team talking about her boyfriend and how he's really into darker stuff with sex, like BDSM, and like kinkier things, and she's not really into it. And she kind of eavesdrops on the conversation, the heroine, and she ends up being caught. And she sees her friend Pen, and she kind of gives her some advice because the heroine, actually really likes doing like BDSM stuff and like more kinkier things in the bedroom, and is trying to give her advice, like, just like find what you like and like stuff like that. And her friend is like, well, we're kind of broken up right now, but I kind of want to set you up with him so like he can figure out what he likes, and then we can get back together. And the heroine is just like so taken aback, and her friend ends up telling the hero about the heroine. And so the hero kind of checks in with the heroine, is like, I heard you like this and I like this, like we should kind of go into like a friends with benefits type situation. And the heroine agrees. And it's kind of this weird dynamic of like them having this friends with benefits situation, but the hero and his ex-girlfriend are broken up, and she's moved on with someone else, his ex. And so the hero and heroine kind of start doing stuff. And I really love the hero, Lucas, I can't remember his name. He is just so obsessed and down bad for the heroine, and I love that so much about his character. Like, he is just so in tune with her, so in tune with her body, and the heroine is dealing with a lot of trauma because she had a previous injury, and so she's really afraid of diving and kind of has these like panic attacks, and the hero works her through it, and it is just so good. I really love their relationship, and their romance was just amazing. Now, I did feel like this one was too long. First of all, it did not need to be literally almost 500 pages. Like, that is not needed for a contemporary romance. I just felt like it was dragged out. And then the other thing that I couldn't stand in this one was Pen, the friend, because she was trying to kind of have this weird ownership over the hero because they were in a past relationship and they're still kind of friends now. But it's like, girl, you literally broke up with him. You also dated someone else and was with someone else. You have no authority over what he does now. Like, it was ridiculous. Super irritating to me. Couldn't stand her. Couldn't stand the third act breakup because it really was like Pen, this other woman drama, and it just really bugged me and bothered me. So that's why this is a 4-star and not a 5-star. Too long, and could not stand the other woman drama. It was not needed, but Lucas and the heroine were just like perfect together. He is just so in tune with her. And I also don't understand why people are so up in arms about how spicy this book is. It's like, Ellie Hazelwood can write what she wants. You do not have to rate it if you don't like it. Like, just let's stop with the hate on spice. I mean, it wasn't like overly spicy. There were a lot of spicy scenes, but that was kind of the connection of their relationship. Like, they were testing out things together, and I really enjoyed this one. But did not love the other woman drama, so that's why it's only 4 stars. Then I picked up The Duke's Perfect Wife on audio as well. This one is a historical romance. It is Second Chance. I think it is the 4th book in the McBride Mackenzie series. So the hero and heroine were engaged years before, but the hero there was like a miscommunication and they broke off their engagement, and now the heroine is back in the picture because she's trying to help the hero, because I think there's like these scandalous photos of the hero being circulated around the town, and she's trying to figure out who is doing this, and all of this stuff. And so they're kind of having to be around each other again, and old feelings are arising. And the hero, he's kind of a tortured hero because he actually, after they broke up, he ended up marrying someone else and having a child with that person. And they both died. And so he just has a lot of trauma around relationships and all of that. And this one was just so good. It's very angsty. Emotional, because he really has to work through his feelings around the trauma of his previous wife passing away and his son, and the heroine is just so patient with him, and he is just so obsessed with the heroine. And it's like, I know we were engaged before, but we should really get together again. And it was just so good. Ended up giving this one 5 stars. Really, really enjoyed it. Then I listened to So Real by Abby Millsaps. This is the 2nd book in her Boys of South Chapel series. I really enjoyed this one. We kind of had this new hero introduced, where the heroine, when she was like studying abroad or was abroad in England, she met the hero, and this is a Why Choose romance series. It's very character driven, so we kind of have like a second chance romance with a previous hero, and then we have a fake dating romance with another hero. And then we, in the last book, introduced this new hero from England. And I really enjoyed this series. I like how we kind of dive deeper into the emotionality of her relationship with the second chance hero, because there's a lot of stuff to unpack there. And I really enjoyed this one. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. It was really solid. I do feel like sometimes it's a little too character driven, and I do want like some other plot, but I did enjoy it. It's a really good, solid Why Choose romance series. So 4.5 stars. Then, because I was on a Boys of Tommen kick, I decided to pick up Redeeming Six, which is the 2nd book, 2nd installment to Joey and Aoife's story. And this one we just pick right up where we left off in the previous book. And this is kind of where we explore a lot of the things that happened during Binding and Keeping 13, which are the first 2 books. And so we're still going along with this wild ride of their relationship, and something happens where Aoife kind of has to hide something from Joey for a while because she knows it will set him off and make him have a relapse. So this one was just super emotional again. so devastating, but we do get a happily ever after at the end, and I just love this book so much. I read it on my Kindle. This one is 750 pages. It's so long, but so good. So absolutely love this one. So amazing. Love Joey and Aoife so much. Then I decided to pick up my Nora Roberts book of the month, and that was High Noon. This one is such an intriguing plot. The heroine, she is a police officer or detective, or maybe she's in the FBI, I can't remember. She's in law enforcement, and she works as a hostage, like negotiator type person. So she's the person on the phone negotiating with the people that take hostages, and is like trying to reason with them to get all of the hostages out of the situation. And so this is, I think, set in like New Orleans. I think it is, or no, it's in Savannah. Yeah, she's a top hostage negotiator. And so she kind of meets the hero one night on like a whim. And they kind of start having a romance, and it's like friends to lovers. And he's kind of a billionaire character, but this really deals more with her family situation. She is a single mom, and she's also living with her mom in their house. Her mom, I think, has agoraphobia is what it's called, where she cannot leave the house. Like, she is terrified to leave the house. And so it kind of deals with a lot of like, what does it look like to be a caretaker and to take care of someone who needs extra help. So I just really love that aspect. And then we have the suspense element where someone that she had a situation with a hostage is leaving her these cryptic notes and is kind of targeting her and her family, and is like leaving things for her, like dead animals, and is very like targeting her, and she ends up being attacked by them at one point. So it's very like high stakes, and I really enjoyed this one. It definitely felt a little bit more character driven than other Nora Roberts books, but I really enjoyed the aspect of her being a hostage negotiator. I thought that was so unique and so interesting, and I really enjoyed this one, and the ending was really awesome with the whole suspense element. It was so good. Highly recommend this one. Then I decided to pick up Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Rorick. I read this on my Kindle, and this is like a new top tier fantasy romance ever. Like, this was amazing. It's so good. I've talked about this a couple times on my channel, so like in videos that I posted in February, but this is new, like god tier fantasy. So this is in a urban fantasy world, and the heroine, she is a fae, and the hero is this type of being called a legacy. It's kind of like a fae, but more important and like more high in like the social structure of this like fantasy world. And so the fae are given to these legacies as kind of like power vectors for them. They can feed their power off of them, like take power from them, the fae, but also it kind of has a mate bond between them. It's called a selection bond. So the heroine, it starts off with her the night of the selection, and she kind of meets the hero in a random like alcove. And they kind of hit it off, and he's like, ooh, I'm going to select her. And at first, she literally doesn't think she's going to be selected at all. And she gets selected by him. She is just so pissed off, because what it means to be selected is you have to give your entire self to the person that like selected you. And it starts off with she has the bond with him, and it is very taxing on her body, which I thought was really unique. And I just loved the push and pull in this relationship. It's a very slow burn. It is so good, very angsty. Like, there is only one spicy scene of this in this book, and I think this book is literally like 800 pages, almost 800 pages, or almost 700 pages. So it takes a long time, and there's this suspense element, plot of like, why did the hero choose her, but he did it for a specific reason, and I just really love the setup of this world. It's super intriguing. The heroine definitely does not make some great decisions during this book. Like, she doesn't really think through the consequences of her actions, but I just love the hero. He is so obsessed with her, and it is just so good. Absolutely love this one. New favorite, and I can't wait to read the rest of the series in March. Then, because I was in a book hangover from Reign of Shadows and Endings, I decided to pick up Cruel Prince by, what's her name? Ashley Jade, because I wanted like a dark bully romance and nothing was piquing my interest. And I'd heard that this book was good. I had it on my TBR for a couple years now. It is a darker bully romance. This one, our hero and heroine, it's like literally the same exact setup as Bully by Penelope Douglas, which I'm like, what? Like, she literally goes off to study abroad in Paris, like in Bully, the heroine did. They were best friends when they were younger, just like the heroine and Bully. And so she comes back, the heroine in Cruel Prince, and is just so excited to see the hero. And it's just like, why didn't he call me for years? And he just absolutely hates her for reasons. But I felt like his reasoning was not a good enough reason. And I honestly thought this book was so, just like the plot of like why he was bullying her was just so stupid and just like pointless, because it was just ended up being a whole miscommunication. And I'm like, that's not the reason to be so horrible to someone. And she just like, the heroine just like doesn't care. Like in the end, she just forgives him anyways. And he doesn't really grovel or say he's sorry anyways either. And he did some pretty bad stuff to her. So this one is getting a 3-star from me. Didn't love it. Kind of hated it, but don't feel like giving it lower than 3 stars would be the best option. It's just a solid 3 stars. Just, it was okay. I ended up reading it in like one night because I was like so intrigued to see if it was going to get better, and it just didn't. So 3 stars for that one. And then I picked up one of my other favorite fantasy romances of the month, which is Rebel Witch by, what's her name, Kristen Saccarelli. I listened to it on audio. This is the second book to Heartless Hunter, and y'all, this book was so good. All of the angst and pining that we were leading up to in Heartless Hunter, we got in this one. And so the hero is a witch hunter, the heroine is a witch, and so in the first book, he is courting her in this high society, this fantasy world, to see if she is a witch, because the witches use blood for their magic, and so they'll have like little scars on their arms or whatever, and the heroine actually uses her pure blood, so she's like undetectable. But they kind of start catching feelings in the first book, and then the big reveal happens, and you know, stuff happens of like they find out each other's identities. And so I just love this book, and there's one scene in this one that is burned in my brain in the beginning of it, where he literally has her cornered in like a hallway, and like he's about to like kill her, but then he realizes, oh, I have like so many feelings for you, and it is so good. Literally love this book so much. And it's also a duet, which I didn't know. So you could just read Heartless Hunter and Rebel Witch and be done with the whole series and have their HEA. And I love this one. It was so good. And the last book I read in February was The Charlie Method by Elle Kennedy. I listened to this on audio, and this one is getting a solid 3.5 stars from me. I just didn't love this, and I'm kind of disappointed in Elle Kennedy a little bit, because this was just pitched as like they're confident, the two heroes, in their sexuality. They like sharing women, and this is going to be a polyamorous relationship, and the heroine is just so hesitant about going into this relationship, because she's just like, oh, I can't do it because it's 2 guys and all this stuff. And I just felt like the characters were very surface level. Like in the previous books, we had so much like boiling up to this point of, especially the 2 heroes, like so confident and just like had such a great friendship. And it kind of like wasn't like that. Like in this book, I feel like we lost their friendship, and I didn't feel their connection as best friends. And I just was kind of disappointed in this one, and it felt like we got a lot with one hero and not with the other. And this one kind of starts off with they meet on an app and start messaging each other, and they're like, oh, like, have you ever been with 2 guys? And she's like, no. And so that kind of starts off their interaction together, and then they start hanging out. and it just felt very character driven, and the heroine is dealing with, she is trying to find her biological family, and so that's a heavy thread throughout this one, but it just felt kind of toxic, like stuff that was happening on with her family, and I don't know, I just didn't love this, and I'm kind of sad. And we also really didn't have like any hockey content. We did get to see a lot of my favorite characters from past books, but they're both hockey players, they're both star hockey players, and I feel like we should have had more hockey content in this. So this one's not a favorite, and I also did not appreciate the third act breakup. I feel bad giving it 3 stars, so it's a solid 3.5, but not a favorite by Elle Kennedy. All right, well, that is the last book I wanted to chat about in this video. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on all of the books I read in February. I read some solid books. I had 7 5-star reads, which was pretty awesome, but I think my favorite was probably the Reign of Shadows and Endings or Rebel Witch. Both were just so good. Let me know what your favorite read of the month was, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.